Misfits, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something very special with you. After hosting over 450 episodes of the Misfit Entrepreneur and sitting down with some of the world's top founders, investors, and high performers, I started to notice something. Different industries, different backgrounds, different paths, but the same patterns kept showing up. So I distilled those patterns into a short, powerful guide called The Misfit Code: 21 Uncomfortable Truths from 450 plus entrepreneurs. This isn't motivational fluff, it's not theory, and it's definitely not the recycled advice that you hear everywhere else. In fact, it's a fast-paced, practical playbook that you can read in one sitting and then apply immediately to help you execute better, raise your standards, break through to your next level. And if you know you're capable of more, or you feel like you've outgrown where you are, or if you're tired of knowing what to do but not executing consistently, this guide was created for you. You can download it for free right now by going to misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. Grab the guide, read it in one sitting, and then come back and work through one misfit truth per day. All right, with that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it is our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that allow them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Alan Versteeg. Alan is an engineer who took one look at the sales world, was deeply skeptical of it, and then proceeded to dominate it. He took everything he knew about cause and effect from engineering and he applied it to sales and sales management. And the results spoke for themselves. The journey led him to co-found Growth Matters International, where he and his team have now developed over 2,000 sales managers across more than 45 countries and some of the most demanding industries of the world. For me, here's what makes Alan different, right? Well, everybody else was focused on training salespeople. Alan figured out years ago that the real leverage point is the sales manager. You get that right and the whole team performs. You get it wrong and no amount of skills training are going to save you. And so today, Alan is really, I've asked him on to share that kind of uncomfortable truths about why sales coaching is broken, why pipeline drought is an epidemic, and really what the best sales organizations in the world actually do differently. So whether you lead a sales team, you're building one, you're a founder who's selling or building a sales team, really this conversation is going to hopefully shift the way you think about things. Alan, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Very keen to share with you. Looking forward to getting started.
Well, it's great to have you on. And, as we have, like all the entrepreneurs that come on the show have unique stories. And you've got a really unique one in the fact that you're an engineer and you shifted gears and totally went into the sales. Usually sales and the engineering side of the business do not mix at all, right? So talk about, maybe take 5 minutes or so. Just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that. And there's a mid part to that story that reinforces what you said, but then I was able to apply things differently. So started my life as an electronic engineer, growing up watching Airwolf, Knight Rider, and MacGyver. I thought that's what I was going to be doing. But education doesn't do a great job in preparing you for the actual job you're going to be doing. So I was doing that for a while, and then I read a book called You're Born an Original, Don't Die a Copy by John Mason. And it basically said if you don't enjoy what you're doing for 2 weeks or more and you passionately hate it, stop. Because you don't live once, you die once. So go find a reason on something else you can do. So I kind of found my way into sales, and please, your audience should not drop off now, but got fired from my first 4 sales jobs. And I was frustrated because as an engineer, I see cause and effect. There's got to be a way, there's got to be a method, there's got to be a framework I can apply to this. But I got the same platitudes of I needed to be more motivated, or I needed to be more excited, or I need to know my product better. So you become this very motivated, world's best talking brochure, but you don't really understand human psychology. And I was interviewed by a person and they asked me this question: is sales a job or a profession? And you know the right answer. You say it's a profession. He says, well, how hard have you studied for this profession? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you studied for engineering. Maybe you need to study for sales. And I said, study what? There's at the time no degree in this. He said, just study human psychology. Start reading books on how people think, how people communicate. Start doing that, and I'll hire you. And that's where the change happened, because as an engineer, I could start seeing the cause and effect. I could start seeing the patterns. I could start seeing the way if you stripped away certain things, you got better results. And that's really where the shift happened for me. And then just jumping a little bit forward, started to realize that that change in me was the fact that I worked under a great sales manager. And I saw this niche in the market that said, we take these top performing salespeople, we promote them into management, we never give them the skills required to perform in that role, to run healthy pipelines, to drive deal success, to drive strong accountability. We just expect them to do it. And that was the niche that we kind of took a misfit move and stepped into and started playing in that niche.
Hearing that story, there's something coming through that I think is really important, and it's the profession. Like, most people are accidental salespeople. They don't start out in sales, they end up there, right? And to your point, like, they don't study the craft, right? I think I heard an ad from one of these groups that does sales training the other day, like, most salespeople never read one sales book or something like that. And it's probably true, right? But and I can speak because I had a great mentor in the same way that was a sales leader when I was, a long time ago, when I did my stint in the corporate world, that helped me out. It is the manager that really helps you become the professional if you're an accidental salesperson, right? Or somebody that, isn't sure how to develop yourself and that sort of thing. And so I think you've hit it on a really good point. And so there's going to be a couple of things we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about the sales management side, but also, like, if I'm a founder, how do I become a great manager of sales? Because a lot of times the founder is managing sales, right? So before we get into that, though, like, you were wired to think in systems, root causes, that sort of thing as you came into this. And so what is it, just take the 10,000 foot view, will come down. What is it that most salespeople and sales leaders are getting completely wrong today? Like, what are those big things that they're getting wrong?
We are overcomplicating the system with technologies, and we're forgetting the key elements. I talk about, subtract to multiply. We've got to be eliminating. And the way you eliminate, you create frameworks, because frameworks are like smart apps for the brain. So if I'm thinking about, for example, trying to persuade someone that's never met me, let's talk about that cold call pitch. And there's all these techniques and tactics. But if you study psychology, it's about relevance to their role, relevance to their challenge, relevance to the outcome. And a framework can get really good very quickly. I've recently been working with sales directors in the technology industry, but we're trying to find ways to drive sustainable pipeline health and forecast accuracy, but have been struggling to, regardless of the investment in technologies. Yes, we've been able to get that up to 95%. Is that something that's relevant to you? Now, that's not Alan born like that. That's not Alan. That's the same Alan that got fired from the 4 sales jobs. It's a frame of reference. It's a framework. So what we do is we complicate everything by trying to find shortcuts that aren't the right cuts, if that makes sense. The real shortcut is a strong framework of thinking, because if you can hold on to the thinking, you can hold on to the conversation. Doesn't sound scripted because you have a frame of reference, not a dictated way of doing things. So we get too rigid in complex methodologies, too rigid in 79-page account plans. Like, an account plan is one thing. Are you showing evidence that you have the customer's intents at the heart of your business and helping them grow their business through your services? And how many account plans tell you that they don't? So for me, as the engineer, it was that there's that scene from Armageddon. I don't know if you've seen that movie, where they've stolen his patent for a rig, and he steps in and he starts ripping stuff out. He goes, what the heck is this? Is this a coffee machine? So engineers eliminate, because the less moving parts there are, the easier it is to remain consistent and sustainable. And that, I think, was the key thing where I brought to my sales profession, but then also into the sales management, because we don't have frameworks for how we run pipeline health, as an example.
Yeah, it's something that I'm curious as your thoughts. I found it to be very helpful in the years over, developing myself in the sales side and as a founder and an owner and running businesses and that. I think one of the biggest assets to being successful in sales is curiosity. I think, because, like you said, a lot of people like just follow the word track script, and it just sounds so like scripted, but at the same time, just so unauthentic versus, you can have a script if you want, but it's like almost like, use pillars of it, set it aside, be curious, like have a conversation and learn and ask and go deeper and go to the next level. And why is that important? Tell me more about like most salespeople never get past the surface level answer to a question, and they miss the gold because they're not curious. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think such a relevant point, and I want to speak to it because there's a nuance here I want these founders to really understand. Their curiosity is a value. So we speak a lot about value-based selling, but we don't speak about values-based selling. Because when you're curious, you listen with a different intent. When you are authentically interested in the customer, you listen with a different intent. When you have tact, you respond with a different tone. These are values. These aren't skills, methodologies, or technologies. So if you think about really successful salespeople, they build trust quite quickly because they're authentic to who they are. They're tactful in their communication. They're centered around the customer's value they want to bring. And as a result, they get to the outcome. Their curiosity makes them want to listen. And it's so important what you're saying because we can all regurgitate a script, but we can't understand the underlying mechanics. When you understand the underlying mechanics, or for example, something called an initial value promise, so 2 points of relevance, 2 points of pain, 1 point of solution, and is it relevant? Then you can make that your own. It doesn't have to be Alan's. It can be yours because you know the mechanics of it. But we can all pass a test by just studying the verbatim answer, but never understanding the underlying mechanics of it.
Yeah, and I just think it gets lost, and you know how it is for newer salespeople. They're getting the answer to the question while they're thinking of the next question they're going to ask, so they miss half the stuff anyways, right? And that's a coaching thing, right? And that goes, you've developed 2,000 plus sales managers across 45 or so countries. What is the one thing that you see that really separates the managers who actually move the needle from the ones who are just, you know, running the meeting, running the business, going through the motions, that sort of thing? What is it? What's the big separator?
I'd say the big one, and that's so important, they understand their job is not to grow sales. It is to grow sales professionals who grow sales. That's the number one differentiator. They have a value system, an intent system that say, I've done this before. I've been an individual contributor. I've performed, but really my value is to grow salespeople who grow sales. It's not to grow sales. And so many
Right.
organizations think that, your sales manager must also own the number, have a number. But then it's conflicting and it's never proven to work, right? So I'd say that's the key thing from a sales manager perspective. Speaking back to your audience, if we step one layer down into sales, the best thing you can do as a founder is bottle your conviction. And what I want to share here, why it's so important, is you'll find that entrepreneurs seldom need sales training, but yet can sell quite well. The reason is the conviction of my value proposition, because I have clarity, gives me confidence. That confidence gives me competence. So often in sales, we're teaching the competence of communication, but not the clarity and conviction of the value proposition. And so many leaders I work with go, you know what our challenge is? Our team don't know our value proposition. And I say, great, what's your value proposition? And they don't know. Because when people get convicted, you can't not sell them. There's everyone on this call who's got some brand they'll defend. If I start attacking Apple right now and saying, oh, you're kidding me, how many generations are there behind in terms of a flip screen? You'll have people attacking me, openly. They're not getting paid by Apple to do that. There's a conviction they have in the value proposition. So for founders, the number one thing you can do when you're starting to scale your sales is not worry about methodology. It's about conviction. Do they have that fire in their belly that you have for what you created to improve the world?
Yeah. And, it's funny that you say that too about it brings up it's kind of an offshoot, and we probably should have started there, but whether people know it or not, everyone is already in sales in some form. It's actually one of the most innate things of human beings. And they just don't think of it that way, right? Like, I mean, anytime you have an idea that you're trying to convince somebody that it's a good idea or that's selling, right? If your significant other's with you because you sold yourself to them, right? Like, so it's something that I find it's interesting that it's such an innate thing, but like in profession, in business, like, there's this like, sales, that there's like this connotation that people can take to it, or that, in the subconscious they have, where they already are innately really good at it. They just would take down the barriers and let it work for them. Right. And maybe that's the coaching piece, because, you talk about, I think, the catastrophic state of sales coaching, but like, I guess that plays in, but paint the picture. Like, how bad is it? And like, what's actually happening? How is it costing companies? And where's the issues where like where coaching really needs that focus, like, and why it needs that focus?
Yeah, I think what you've put forward is such a great way to explain what good coaching actually looks like and why it's in such a catastrophic state. Let's start at the first part. We're more loyal to our identity than we are to our desires. And we know this to be true. And the reality is, if all I have is a Hollywood negative reference of what a sales professional looks like, I'm not going to identify as a sales professional because I've got the wrong frame of reference. But if my frame of reference was selling won't help, but helping will sell, and it would be negligent for me to deny you the value I could bring you, well, then I'm operating on a completely different behavioral platform. And this is where coaching gets it wrong. We don't coach behaviors, we coach thinking. So if you study David Rock's work in The Quiet Leadership, it's the questions we ask to shift the thinking. It's the question we ask to get people to think about what specifically in the client's business is going to change as a result of them working for us. We think that's an investigation question, but it's actually a thinking question, because as if by magic, you keep asking that, the sales professional is going to be sitting in front of a client going, so what specifically are you hoping will change in your business as a result of working for us? The challenge with coaching is it's inefficient initially. So it's the first meeting canceled and the last metric measured. And I just want us to pause here. When all the data suggests that this is the most significant thing you can do to drive a sales performance change, more than the investments you're making in AI, the investments you're making in technologies, the investments you're making in methodology, all of these investments, why is it the first thing we cancel? You should be protecting this with everything. But it's often because coaching is misled as mentoring or inspection. Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Great, I've coached you. No. It's asking those questions that are at the thinking layer, you know? So why is it that you think there are certain people that aren't at the table? What is it that's not happening internally that might be breaking down our value proposition? These are questions that the answer forces thinking. And that's what's about frameworks and thinking. Selling is a very well-paid thinking skill, right? Because thinking forces you to listen. But coaching often coaches against criteria of behavior as opposed to criteria of thinking. High performers think differently because they've got a different value system. So that's where those two match, right? It's the one that changed the identity by changing the thinking, get them to believe that selling won't help, but helping will sell, and that it's negligent to deny the value. That's the conviction piece. But then coach the behaviors, not by saying, you know what I would do if I was in your shoes. That's mentoring. Coaching is if I would ask that question, let me ask them that question. What specifically in the client's business is going to change? And I often go, if that's a good question, but eventually that sticks, and then they start mimicking that in the behaviors and conversations. So coaching is the multiplier and accelerator of thinking change when you understand it's a thinking shifting tool, not a behavior shifting tool. And behavior always follows thinking, not the other way around.
You know, as I hear you say that, it alludes to something you said earlier about it's the approach that it's the attitude that the leader takes to coaching. In fact, we'll stop there. I want to take just a quick break. I want to come back because I want to unpack that. I think it's a bigger conversation. So we'll do that. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again. Okay, so Alan, most companies will invest more like enabling the sales process and reps and stuff than really developing like their managers. And it's the approach that the leader or the manager or the professional needs to take in working with their sales team that has to be changed in the way they look at it. And what I mean by that is one of the things that I found out the hard way, but I learned it years ago. And I ask it of every sales leader, right? Either if I'm interviewing for one or I'm coaching one. I ask, who are your customers? Most of the time, they're going to say, well, our customers here's our ICP. This is the type of customer we're looking for. And I'll say, those aren't your customers. Those aren't your customers. Who are your customers? And they'll look at me funny, but it's meant to cause them to stop and think, right? Because their customers are really their sales team. And you kind of said this earlier. And sales leaders don't realize that. Like, you're developing salespeople to sell. Like, that's your job. That's what you're there for. So your customer becomes your people, your team. And those are the people you got to cater to. So when you look at it that way, it takes a much different, you approach it in a much different way. If you look at your sales team like your customers as the sales leader that you are helping to succeed. And so I think that's the distinction that, and you make it, you said it differently earlier, but that's the distinction that I think sales leaders really have to be trained and understand and approach with to make a real difference. I mean, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's such a powerful insight because of the fact that even if you're an owner entrepreneur and you're building a sales team, the tendency is that you're going to take on the auditing inspection approach and not realizing, the way I said it was the job of a sales leader is not to grow sales, but to grow salespeople to grow sales. And that means that their function becomes, they've got to get the number by executing the strategy through their people to drive customer value, not for their people. And that shift then changes that it's not just getting the number, it's getting the number to remain relevant in the market through the strategy, doing that through the people so you can scale to drive the customer value so you remain relevant to the customers you're serving. So it's exactly that it shifts from your customer being who they sell to how you influence the people that are selling to them.
Yeah. And I think if, anyone listening, whether you're a founder or you're in a sales role or where you're at, I think if you can understand that distinction and approach your business that way, it'll make a huge difference for you. Another thing you talk about in big in sales is you talk about pipeline. You talk about like most pipelines are like flatlining. So why is that? And I guess what does a truly healthy pipeline look like compared to what most sales leaders are tolerating these days?
Well, I think once again, it starts with the frame of reference or the framework of what healthy looks like. We say healthy pipeline. The large majority of organizations, that means cover. So the language is cover, meaning if I've got $1 million target and I need 3 times cover, well, then I've got a healthy pipeline because I've got cover. But that's only one metric of 4 that matter. And it does matter because if you've got a $1 million target and you've got $500,000 cover, I don't care how great you are, you're in trouble, right? So it's a health factor. But the other health factor for contingency is you need volume. You can't be relying on one big deal that can sway you other way. So you need a volume of opportunity. So you need value, cover, and you need volume, which is enough in there for contingency. But then none of that matters if collectively there's not velocity. Because what happens with so many organizations, and they don't intend to do this, but tell me how you measure me, I'll tell you how I behave. What happens is because I'm demanding you have 3 times cover in your pipeline, I don't sanitize my pipeline. I don't disqualify out deals that aren't going to work. I just keep pushing the end date further or leaving them stagnant in that pipeline. So velocity is the metric that says the water's flowing. And I want to say this to your audience. It's not a sales funnel. Funnels rely on gravity. You put stuff in the top, stuff comes out the bottom. It's a sales pipeline, inspection, pressure, flow, things you have to drive. And that's volume, velocity, and value. The last one is shape. You want to have healthy early, mid, and late stage opportunities because we can get caught up in that big deal at the end of the quarter. And most organizations coach and expect that end of quarter deal. They land that deal, they look around, they've decimated their pipeline because they don't have a healthy shape, which is then fed by consistent prospecting. So a healthy pipeline is volume, velocity, value, and shape. Enough value cover, So I've got that money cover, volume cover, so I've got contingency, velocity, so that it's moving, and shape that have predictability quarter by quarter.
That makes complete sense. I think anybody listening too, but you started with something that I think is extremely important. And as leaders and stuff, sales leaders, even founders, have to stop lying to themselves, and they need to do pipeline angioplasty. They need to clear it out, right? If somebody's been sitting there for 8 months and isn't buying, like, cleansing question, are we going to do business or not? No. Okay, they're out, right? I think there's a lot of like negative connotation to saying like close lost, right? Like a lot of things in pipeline are close lost or whatever, because, oh no, it affects our close rate or that sort of thing. But it's not reality anyways, right?
Yes.
If you leave them hanging out, you got this massive, robust pipeline, millions of dollars, none of it's ever going to sell, and you're just lying to yourself. Why wouldn't you want to work with what is actually going to sell and get rid of, and it's also spinning your wheels. Your team spins their wheels because they reach out, nothing happens. And so it's like, you just get real and clear the decks where it makes sense and focus. And it's 80-20 rule. 20% of what you do is going to generate 80% of your business. 20% of that pipeline is 80% of your business that you want. Focus on that. Why worry about the rest?
100%. And the challenge is that we treat qualification as an entry-level discipline, not a consistent discipline across the life cycle of the deal. We always got to be qualifying that deal. Is there a genuine opportunity? Is our solution relevant? What are their options? What's their timing? Who do we need to influence? How will it be funded? That's a consistent thing because you're bringing more and more stakeholders into that deal. And when you're doing that, you don't have to do a loss review because you'll know why you lost it because you're looking at those criteria. But something you said that's so important to a business is when we don't take control of our pipeline, we can't take control of our production line. And that's what then happens. Salespeople get frustrated because we don't have resources or we don't have stock or we don't. I'm saying, well, you're responsible because you're not taking care of the pipeline. It's the predictor that gets our forecasting accurate so we can run a predictable business engine. It's not just, hey, put some numbers in a CRM system so they look pretty, because that's the easy part to do.
Yeah. And again, why lie to yourself? Know what reality is so you can really, truly get better at stuff, because it masks a lot of things too.
How dare you be the misfit that actually puts the truth in your pipeline? I mean, how dare you be that guy? You know what I mean?
I would rather I would rather like have less demos and sell more than have a bunch of demos and not sell anything. It just, you're spinning your wheels.
Such a bad idea.
There's you mentioned AI earlier, and there's that kind of this big push. There's AI, but there's like data-driven sales and this customer centricity type world. And you talked about it earlier, you made this distinction between like having a plan, actually like embedding like this customer first culture. So what is just clarify what the difference is there and why it matters?
Well, if you have a customer first culture, and if we're talking about AI specifically, AI is a thinking partner and an execution asset. But it's only as good as your thinking and your execution intent, right? So it gives you the ability to bottle certain expertise and do certain things more efficiently and effectively. There's no doubt about that. But it's premised by the strength of our values system. And what's going to be happening and is happening in sales, there's now less trust because everyone seems to sound like an expert. But what you said earlier speaks to this. When you scratch that one surface layer, they can't maintain a credible conversation around the value proposition because the prompting wasn't created by strong thinking and a strong values system. So your values and your thinking become your number one asset in an AI world, because now you got the ability to take that, bottle that expertise, and deploy that scale in the best interest of the customer value you're trying to create. So it helps you educate your customers out of their own ignorance. It helps you get stronger in understanding competitive analysis. It helps you do these things. But when you're asking these superficial things that are just about, I wonder how I can get in front of them and sell them something, it's very different to what are the key challenges I'm fixing for this persona? What could they have been doing before? What does it look like as an initial value promise? What questions do I need to ask them? And then you don't follow that script. It just informs your thinking. It's another really powerful quiver in your bow. But for me, what I'm finding is it's much easier to sell against sellers now that are abusing AI as an efficiency hack because they don't have the effectiveness of thinking frameworks, the engineer stuff, and they don't have the value system of my intent is to protect you from your own ignorance and add value you don't know is there. Because that intent's different.
Yeah, no, and it makes a lot of sense. And there's a balance to it. I mean, AI is a tool like anything else, and you can wield it really, really well to help you, or, you can wield it in a way that it doesn't help you. And, you don't let AI remove your ability to think. I mean, that's one challenge I think we're going to have as a society with this as it continues to grow. You know, but definitely use it to help you think better, move more efficiently or effectively, right? And that sort of thing. My last question for you before we get to your Misfit 3, as I kind of think about this, is somebody's founders listening right now, sales leaders listening right now, and they're going, okay, I get it. Yes. I mean, I've got to do a better job in this area of my business or do a better job in my role. And let's just say they want to start fixing this kind of sales and coaching culture like this week, not like next quarter, like starting this week. Like, what is the first move they should make and why?
They should find an effective framework for what a good deal looks like, and they should consistently coach against those deals, understanding the next actions you can take. And the reason that is that's where you're shaping behavior. That's where you're getting control of your pipe and forecast. That's where you know what's actually going on. And it's not an inspection. It's an understanding of what a good framework looks like. And there's different frameworks. We have clients that have their own really good frameworks. Our framework is we use a growth because growth matters. So we use, is the opportunity genuine? Is our solution relevant? What are the options on the table? Who needs to be influenced? What's their timing? How will it be funded? And we're always coaching against the criteria. When you take control of your deal coaching, you take control of your deals in your pipeline. Sometimes decimating areas of your pipeline because you realize there's no way in hell. But you'd be surprised how many deals we will coach that is sitting in ed stage land this quarter and we don't have access to power. And I'm going, well, that's because we haven't coached the deals. So get strong, not an inspect. There's a balance between inspection and coaching. Later stage deals inspect. Have we got this in place? Is this sorted? Is the legal in place? There's things happening, right? That's that stage. But in the mid stage, you can influence behavior. You can influence your pipeline. So if I was doing one thing, it'd be one-on-one deal coaching on the critical deals that matter in my pipeline, whether they're high value, high visibility, or they've stalled. And I'd be doing that because that moves the deals through my pipe. And then I start to, in that process, shift behavior. Because I ask questions like, so what are their options? And what is the consequence of them doing nothing? And why is this person not at the table? I ask the questions that shape the behavior, that control the deal, that create the pipeline, that give me the forecast. That's the one thing I do.
I love the growth acronym for that too. The last one's probably the most important. As I hear that, like most people don't qualify if somebody can actually purchase and buy.
Yeah.
It has the
So what
funds,
we
right?
say is, how will it be funded? Not is there a budget? Because in our business, 90% of the time we're getting budget moved. Because I have a mindset that says budget is how companies control their spending. I just need them to put their budget somewhere else. So don't go invest X amount of dollars in a sales methodology when you haven't developed your sales leaders. Shift that money across. There's a higher return. It's a multiplier. So it's how will it be funded? And if we can't get that answer, it's critical. But often it's do their budget. Often they don't know their budget because they don't know what you're selling yet. They don't know the value.
Well, that's a great distinction and a great place to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. So we're going to do that. We're going to take just one more quick break. We'll be right back with Alan's Misfit 3.
Misfits. People ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Okay, it's time for Alan's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. The way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom for the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what will those 3 things be? So, Alan, what are your Misfit 3?
Yeah, so bringing it through from this conversation, the last one is where we started. Let me start at the beginning. The job of a sales leader is not to grow sales, but to grow salespeople who grow sales. That shift changes everything in an organization's ability to scale their sales engine, because we've forgotten that art. Because of the advent of CRM systems moving behind the mouse, moving out to the field, we've lost control of understanding what's actually going on and our role, which is to grow those people. When you get that right, then everything in that sales system changes. If you're a founder entrepreneur, conviction trumps competence. Get people convicted. Be very crystal clear about your value proposition. Get that conviction, because then you create these free agents, right? These people are just so excited to sell, and they're going to have to learn and develop skills. You can coach them, right? But if they don't believe in it, it's very hard to bring that to market. And the last one I'd say in sales, specifically because it's an entrepreneurial instinct to add, is subtract before you scale, right? You want to eliminate to dominate. We're often adding more products, more clients, more teams, more stuff into the pipeline, and more metrics and more KPIs and more dashboards and more systems and more technologies and more. And we're not going, wait a minute. You just asked me a question. What's the one thing I would do? If I had to strip everything else out, I'd be doing one-on-one deal coaching all the time. If I can do that with the help of AI and the help of data and the help of everything, it's wonderful, but that's the one thing I do. So the tendency in sales is if we, and let me punchline this way. We add more to give us a greater sense of control by stopping doing the things that actually put us in control. Subtract to scale. You want to eliminate to dominate by saying what actually works, what's that high leverage thing that we're non-negotiable in how we operate this area in our business.
It's an excellent Misfit 3, and that last one is so critical. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
The best place is LinkedIn, and I luckily have a very unique name. So you stick it into any search engine, you're going to find me. So it's Alan Versteeg, and you'll find me online. LinkedIn is where I put most of my content. And from there, you can find out about our company and our services and our offerings and other things that we do to drive growth, because growth matters.
Awesome. We will link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business, for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, first episode with us, welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. I hope you become a regular listener, watcher, subscriber of the show. And for all of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes of this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. I still go back through these episodes. I still take the key points, the habits, the insights, the things that I feel are really important, and I share those with you. So go check those out, and then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share Alan's message, because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Alan shared today was that missing link you needed to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Alan, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Thank you so much for having me.